Today's episode is sponsored by Workwear and PPE Supplies. They cater for all your company's branded workwear, uniform and PPE needs. From head to toe protection, they've got you covered. Check out their exciting workwear bundle, which is only £99 and includes 9 items of clothing with free embroidery and setup. You can see the full range of products at www.ppe.co.uk or give their sales team a call on 01236 750 575. Regardless of the size of your organisation, they've got you covered.
Right, hello all and welcome to another episode of the Risking It All podcast. Today we are delighted to be joined by Jamie Simpson. Jamie, thanks for coming along.
Thank you for having me.
All the way up from sunny London.
Yes.
Jamie is a business turnaround specialist, a business investor and partner in Monopoli Capital. We had his business partner Stephen on a couple of weeks ago. So
no pressure following up Stephen or anything like that?
No pressure, mate, no pressure. So as we always like to do with every guest that's on the podcast, we'll get right into the weeds, what we're up to in recent years, but let's take it back to where it all began for yourself, Jamie. So talk to us a bit about where you're from, upbringing, siblings, parents. Just share as much as you're willing to, mate.
Right at the beginning, yeah?
Right at the beginning.
Yeah, so I was born down in Brighton, which is a great night out for anyone listening.
I've heard that.
Very good.
Yeah.
I'll have to take you boys out down there.
Yeah, all for that.
I'll come on to it, but I used to do door work there as well, so I know all the haunts, which is fantastic. But I was actually raised in a place called Crawley, next to Gatwick Airport. Usual bit naughty at school, entrepreneurial story. I'm sure everyone has the same story, so I'll skip by that bit. But I didn't go straight into business. I did dead-end job after dead-end job. I've done jobs such as working in warehouses, I've done the doors, I've done sales jobs, selling car parking spaces, selling holidays, selling carpets, and then I became a taxi driver, and that's before I started getting into business itself. But I think my first entrepreneurial venture, if you like, was selling cigarettes at school. 3 for £1 or 50p each.
That's it. That was definitely a model that was emulated this side of the border as well.
Same price?
I was never a smoker myself, and I promise I'm not just saying that because my parents listen to every episode, so I can't confirm nor deny that I know that it was the same prices, mate, but I definitely know it went on up the back of the scale.
If they were, then I'd definitely underpriced.
London prices, it was probably more expensive than there, let's be honest.
I'd like to think so, otherwise I've left money on the table there, haven't I?
So school for you, in summary, just you weren't a born academic, really. It was just get yourself out of school as soon as you can and get into working.
Do you know what? I was all right at school. When I put my mind to it, I could pass tests. I believe I got 5 A to C's, majority B's. I never really did the coursework or anything. Just shiny object syndrome. By the time you get home, the last thing you want to do is more schoolwork, right?
Aye.
So if I applied myself to
That's pretty good, to be fair.
Yeah,
that is good.
Yeah, it's all right. I was never like A-star student. But I think the same as anything, if you can focus on something, you're passable at it, as long as you put in the reps. So yeah, I was all right at school, but I just never liked being told what to do or authority. I'm sure yourselves as business owners can relate to that.
Yeah, definitely. And what about your family dynamic? Did you have any brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I've got 2 sisters, but my parents split up when I was 11.
Right.
And my mum moved to Spain with my sisters,
Right,
and I moved in with my nan. So I've got a bit of a unique family dynamic where I have got siblings, but we didn't really grow up as siblings.
Right.
So yeah, they're very different, raised quite differently. I was raised by a grandparent, they're raised by my mother, and we've all turned out extremely different. So
fair enough. Where in Spain did they move to?
Costa del Sol, so all over the Costa del Sol, the typical Mijas, Fuengirolas, etc.
Mijas is lovely, but it's a nice place.
There's 2 bits of Mijas. So you've got Mijas Costa, which is the beach side, and then Mijas Pueblo, which is Mijas town up in the mountains, which is really nice. Yeah,
I've been there before. It's lovely. And so obviously you mentioned, didn't they really like getting told what to do when you were younger?
Even now.
Probably still now.
Ask my wife.
So obviously it was you and your nan, you said there.
Yep.
So What was that like going through school? Obviously, your parents and your sisters away in Spain. Did your nan help you sort of get through those early years of your...
Yeah, it's a difficult one because my nan taught me a lot. She's very people focused, very charity focused, look after people, be a good person. But at the same time, she's my nan, and I'm sure that your nan spoilt you.
Oh, yeah.
So I got away with way too much than what I should have, which probably helped me become a better businessman because, as Aristotle Onassis said, the former richest man in the world, there's one rule, there are no rules. And with my nan, there were no rules. So I could really push the envelope in every aspect of my life, and there wasn't much pushback. But I think that's been good for me, entrepreneurial, because I don't worry about consequences. I'd rather ask for forgiveness than permission. So I think my nan is not very business-minded, or was not very business-minded at all, but her upbringing has possibly contributed to me pushing the envelope and seeing where I can take business, if you like.
Great. And was there any further education after school? Did you do college or uni, or was it just straight into the working?
Yes, I went to college for about 2 weeks to do painting, decorating. and then they still had the same schedule of you need to be at this class at this time. And I think I did about 4 hours of painting. I was like, I can't be doing this for the rest of my life.
I see. I was very much like, I remember being in that period where initially thought, right, I'll maybe go to college or uni and try and do something, and then thought, I don't even go to school a lot of the time, and that's with somebody phoning your parent to say he's no turned up. Where is he? I've no chance in college or uni, where it's like, if you don't turn up, you don't turn up. They don't care. They just put you out. Like,
and I'm sure it's a great model for some people, but my brain's just too busy for it. I'm looking out the window thinking of other things. If I'm doing painting, decorating, my brain is just way too active. It's probably quite dangerous for me. So, I went down other avenues where I personally was more stimulated.
And you skated through a couple of the jobs that you did in early life, but what was like proper job number one?
Proper job number one was working at a company called BCP, British Car Parking, and it's where you used to call up and say, I'm going on holiday for a week, I need to park my car, and you charge 25p, or sorry, you'd get a commission of 25p for every car parking space you sold.
Right, okay.
But then they said, if you sell insurance, we'll give you £4 commission for each one. So I just focused purely on insurance, whereas other people just saw it as a bit of a chore, a bit of a job, sell this, being told what to do. I thought, it's a bit of a money maker here. So I turned into an insurance salesman through selling car parking.
Right.
I was only 16, but I become the top seller there simply just by asking the question, have you got your travel insurance yet? And then I thought, I'm all right at this. I can actually earn more money than... Because when you're young and you don't have any skills from school, etc., you think, I'm going to be on minimum wage for the rest of my life. I think that was the first aha moment that I had where I thought, actually, if I improve skill sets here, you can go up a level or two on the pay ladder as well.
Yeah, it makes sense. And obviously your first job, a sales job, was it?
Yes.
Was it love at first sight when you started getting commission in, or how did you go about that first sales environment?
It came quite naturally. It was in a call centre.
Right.
But you're just surrounded by young, attractive women in call centres, aren't you? So it wasn't really a chore to be there. It was more of a hobby. And then I started doing door-to-door sales, and that's ruthless, but that's
tough.
Fantastic.
What were you selling door-to-door?
Oh, double glazing, of course. What else?
Right,
What else?
Oh, God. Do you know, I honestly think that you'll be episode number 27 or 28, I want to say, right?
Go on, how many have done it?
And the amount of people that have not worked in a call centre are in the complete minority.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like pretty much everybody that sat across from us at some point has worked in a call centre
But
selling.
the call centre, what's the benefit of that? It's not the selling, it's the volume of the selling, right? Mm-hmm. So when you're in a call centre, you finish a call, another one squirts into your ear. So not everyone is naturally gifted at sales, but if you work in a call centre or you do door-to-door, you put yourself in an environment where you have to do volume, reps. And like I said to you earlier, if you put your mind to anything and practice it enough, you're going to be competent at it. You may not be world-class, but you're going to get good at it. And I think sales at an early age is a fantastic way to develop a good foundation of sales skills that can stack on top of other skill sets to take you to where you desire to be in the future.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Actually, I've never thought it that way. It's all good and well getting exposure to sales, but in that environment, it's mass exposure to sales.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you're just constantly refining and working on it. So
and if you get a rejection, you don't dwell on it. You don't go home and go, oh no, I didn't convert that call. Straight away, you've got another call to try and convert that one. So you don't actually get time to dwell on it. So you're not dwelling on the fear of rejection, which most people associate with sales, that are scared of sales. You're actually building on top of it and saying, okay, well, how they said no when I said this. So next time, why don't I say something different? And then you just find the puzzle that unlocks the code.
Aye. It won't come as a surprise to most people, but I'm really interested in almost like, not necessarily the psychology behind working in contact centres, but I worked in contact centres for 20 years.
Wow.
And like through my own experience and speaking to people in this podcast, I think I now firmly believe that if you can survive, and you know, I use the word survive because it's not exactly tough graft, just sitting on your arse order, taking and earning good cash, right? But people that do well in those environments tend to do well no matter what they turn their hand to. There's just something about the resilience that it builds in you as well, like when you're facing into that like ocean of rejection.
I think it's handling boredom as well, because you're doing the same thing over and over again. If you can master the monotonous, and your type A personality and you want to constantly improve, those two traits combined are quite dangerous, really, aren't they?
Aye, good point. All right, so call centre and then a bit of door to door and brutal, I'm guessing, door to door.
Yeah, I didn't mind it though, because it gets you over that fear of rejection. And I had a mentor later on who's actually based in Scotland, Dan Peña. He said life's just a numbers game. So once you find out life's a numbers game, you don't dwell on the rejection. It's a lot easier to get from point A to point B because you're not sitting around moping in between.
Is that him that lives in a castle?
Am
I thinking the right guy, the older guy, wears the suit? Right, okay.
So I actually visited the castle for a week.
Did you? Right,
and,
okay.
went through his QLA methodology, which was interesting.
I mean, probably the epitome of like a Marmite character. It's like you hate him,
on it though, right?
or you really like him.
He looks like the Monopoly man.
Aye, he does. Do you know what we're on about here?
I think so.
You've seen his clips
the
online,
castle's ringing a bell, I think.
But like loaded, he's done really, really, really well.
Yeah, through mergers and acquisitions, which is kind of what I do now. So
yeah,
brilliant.
All right, mate. And can you remember at what point throughout your working career, there's always a period of time where entrepreneurs start to get that wee itch around, I could maybe do something on my own here, actually. Typically, it's in the industry that you're involved in already.
Yeah, so I've always had that itch. I just lost it for a couple of years. So I went to do security. I did some like private debt collecting. I've worked on the doors, etc. Just trying to follow a path that I thought I wanted to do at that age, which was probably more bravado than anything, to be honest with you. And once I realised that there's no future in that, it's not that enjoyable, and I need to grow up, I thought, well, what job can I do where I get some freedom? And I'm not told what to do, because it's clearly a theme of my personality here. I don't like being told what to do. So I became a taxi driver, so I can work my own hours. And I think I was only 22 at the time. So the insurance on the taxi was something like, it's ridiculous. It was like £1,000 a month.
Yeah.
And I rented a vehicle, and the vehicle was like £800 a month, £200 a week. And it was like £1,000 a month for the insurance. But the vehicle that I rented, actually, I saw lots of them at Glasgow Airport actually on the way here. It was a Peugeot partner where it had a ramp on the back.
Yeah.
And the reason why they have ramps on the back is obviously for wheelchair users, but the councils incentivise you to have a wheelchair accessible vehicle by giving you a lower rent for your licence. So there's more wheelchair accessible vehicles on the road. So I'm renting one of these vehicles and I'm not really utilising it. And I'm thinking, I could do something with this. So I wrote out a template letter. And again, no fear of rejection. I just wrote out letters with business cards to every single care home and local authority within a certain radius and said, I've got a wheelchair vehicle. Would any of your residents or clients be interested in using it? And just like that, my company, Wheelchair Taxis, was born. And over the next 4 or 5 years, I scaled that, subcontracted a lot of that out, put in an operational director, and used that business to fund me, doing a lot of traveling around the world. So yes, it did kind of happen overnight, but my entrepreneurial flair's been there from an early age. I just had a really, really lazy few years in between there.
Yeah. All right. Okay. That's interesting, mate. Actually, that's an interesting business model. So, again, you skated through that quite quickly, but keen to dig into that a bit. So, you spotted that opportunity, which was essentially going out to market and trying to, I guess, market an opportunity for a taxi business to gain more customers with a disability that had a requirement for wheelchair access. And what was the model there? Was that literally just they used you on an as and when basis, like a typical taxi, or was it like contracts that were in place?
It's a really good question, actually. So we started off doing care homes, so people that needed to go to appointments, needed to go to hospital, etc. But then the need was established for maybe longer term projects. So maybe somebody visited a day centre once a week or twice a week, and maybe someone else in that unit also went to that day centre or a different day centre. So it went from smaller one-off jobs, which was a niche that nobody else was operating in. So I had a constant flow of work instead of sitting at a taxi rank waiting for work to come to me, which I'm not very good at. I'm quite a proactive person. So instead the work, I went out to generate the work by letting people know of the service that I operated. And that led to multiple regular contracts, such as school runs, regular day centre trips, accounts with the NHS. So whenever they had someone in a wheelchair that needed transport, they would come to me. And of course, they had multiple users like that. So over the course of about 3 to 4 years, we really had the monopoly, pardon the pun for my current business name, within the Surrey and Sussex area down in England.
Right, okay. And then obviously from you in the taxi yourself as a 22-year-old to fulfilling all of this demand, obviously you need more people to do that. So how did you go about not just scaling your business, but getting the right people into it to help you scale it?
To be honest, I didn't get the right people in. I've learned that as I've grown throughout my business life. I needed a role filled, so I took the first person that filled it, which 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100 is usually the wrong decision. So what I did is I sold the benefits to existing taxi drivers that were the best of a bad bunch, to be honest with you. Why don't you get yourself a wheelchair vehicle? It doubles up as an ordinary taxi, but you've got the perks of having the lower licensing fees because it is wheelchair accessible. So I sold the benefits of that to them. They could carry on doing what they're doing, but then they could subcontract work through me. So because a lot of taxi drivers have the same mentality I did. I want to work for myself. I want to do my own hours. I don't want to be told what to do. So instead of me saying, get that vehicle and I will tell you where to be at what time and I will pay you, I said, but why don't you get this vehicle? Here's the benefits.
It's clever.
Why I can give you work as and when it comes in. It's higher margin work than what you're used to, and it saves you sitting around a taxi rank, and you're not obliged to do the work. Just give me a bit of notice if you don't want to do this type of work anymore or you can't do that job. And they're earning twice as much from this work, and they're not sat around a taxi rank looking around them going, oh, where's the next job coming from?
I was going to ask that actually. Did the end customer pay more because it's a more specialist vehicle that's in use?
They did. It's a niche, but tended not to private customers. We didn't really charge more because if you've got an 80-year-old woman on her pension that needs to get to an appointment, I was raised by my nan, and I was thinking, what would my nan do here?
You're a better man than me.
Well, I left
those pensioners are loaded.
I left quite a bit of money on the table there because of my affiliation of being raised by my nan. But when it came to local authorities and NHSs, and you see the type of money that they're wasting on things, I thought, no, let's see what I can get away with here. And by the time I'd subcontracted out, the arbitrage between what I charged and what I paid the driver, essentially I lived off. And because they were doing the work for me and I created a system where the work would go directly to them, I could travel the world. So I went to South Africa, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Australia, Cuba, Jamaica. I went to all these places while I was still earning money. So it was a cash flowing business because I made the communication directly for when the leads were being generated to the drivers and removed myself as a buffer in between.
I was going to ask you that. You mentioned getting an operational director in place. Was that driven by some advice that you had got, or was that just a willingness to travel and not wanting to be in that business day to day at the time?
It was probably by luck. I mean, everyone's going to sit here and say, I read the E-Myth, right? And that's why I systemised my business, but I kind of just stumbled across it. And I say operations director, it was literally just a guy that acted as a buffer for me. That title was not the title at the time. It was a friend / colleague that did it for me. But once I saw the benefits of that and could sell the benefits to them, so they prospered from doing that role rather than just taking the workload off me, it was a model that worked for all parties.
Right, okay. So again, the messaging on not just the taxi driver, but this person who took that role on, is the two things I'm picking up for that is you got them involved through getting them to see the benefits rather than see your vision or the vision of the business. It was all selling on benefits.
Yeah, because again, I don't like being told what to do.
Yeah.
If somebody tells me what to do, straight away I'm going to put a barrier up and go, why should I do that? Even if it's in my interest, just 'cause my personality is the way I am. I could try and change it, I'd waste a lot of time. But if someone comes up to me and says, have you thought about doing it this way because the benefits of that to you could be this? Straight away I'm thinking, it's like how to win friends and influence people.
Yeah.
Position yourself to benefit other people. I'm thinking of the benefits from me and how this can benefit me long term. And you can only think of one thought process at a time, right? So I'm not thinking, oh, what's in it for them? Why are they suggesting that? Because I'm too busy thinking about what's in it for me. So as long as you do it genuinely and you're not trying to manipulate someone and they are actually the perks to that person, I think it's the best way to create an environment where people want to position themselves to work towards the same mission as you.
Yeah. That's great advice, actually, because I've often thought, like, it doesn't matter where you go now, the advice is create a business that can survive without you. Get yourself out of it. And that wholeheartedly makes sense. But the part, just because we've not done it yet, that I wouldn't say I struggle with understanding, but that I've always in my head thought that would be a challenge, is getting the people that are remaining within the business bought into that vision. Like, I'm trying to get myself out of here, but I don't just want to then dump everything onto you because I don't want to do it. It's almost like getting them, you know, it's cliche, but on the bus with you and travelling with you and all that.
But that's about culture, right? So if you work with them for 4 or 5 years and then go, by the way, guys, we're looking to sell in 3 years. I need you to do this. Here's your KPI, reporting to me weekly. They're doing it so you can sell the business, so you can benefit. If you communicate that culture from day one, say, guys, this is the mission. It's a 5-year project for me. We're at A, I want to get to Z. Here's how I plan to get there. I need you guys to help me. Here's what's in it for you. Now, you might want to incentivize them with a slice of the pie so they could benefit financially. Most people aren't going to do that, but you need to show them what's in it for them with a career path. So if this is a 7-year project and you're recording this podcast for me now, I'm going to need an editor. As we grow, I'm going to need somebody to oversee a team of editors. So I'm going to invest in you and your skill sets through not just financially, but through time and mentoring. And I'm going to rely on you as well. By making somebody feel important and part of the process, they're more aligned to 99% of people aren't leaders. So just by leading, people are going to react well to that. But like I touched on earlier, as long as it's genuine and you can clearly show a path for them and the benefits of them, they're more inclined to do that. If you do that in the last 12 months because you want to get an exit, they're going to say, well, you're just doing that to benefit you. Yeah. If you can create that culture from day one, guys, here's the mission. We're on this team together. It's like a footballer. If the footballer's like, my goal's to go out there and just score a hat trick and I don't care if we lose 4-3, no one's going to want to be part of your team. If you're like, look, guys, I'm a great goal scorer. If you can keep a clean sheet, pass the ball up from the back, feed me the ball, I will score. I will come back and help you defend when I need to, but if I can score and we can nick this 1-0, we get 3 points on the board and we win as a team. If you're saying just pass me the ball so I can score and I don't care if we win or lose, it's a different conversation, right?
Great advice, mate. And taxi business then, did you exit that business? Are you still part of that business?
I exited it to my operations director. Right. It wasn't a big sexy exit. It was an exit and I did all right out of it, but I did better while I was actually owning the business. I took some intellectual property out of that business as well, which I still own. But my friend still runs that. And has the benefits of running that business and cherry picking the best work for himself.
Good. And what made you decide to exit for that business in particular? Did you just have an itch to try something new?
Yeah, I went down the mergers and acquisitions route, which I learned from Dan Peña, who's the castle man, the Monopoly man that I told you about earlier. And I wanted to go and acquire businesses. So I was doing that parallel. And once I got to the stage where I could see that I wanted to put all my eggs in the acquisitions and business growth basket, I thought that a good time to exit, because you've only got 100 energy tokens a day, right? If I'm spending 50 of them on the taxi business, 20% on mergers and acquisitions and 30 on family life, it'd be a lot better if I got those 50 energy tokens back and distributed them in the direction where I see my future. And it worked out that way.
All right,
Brilliant.
cool. And I guess, sorry to cut in front of you, Barry, I was just going to ask there, I guess some time with Dan doesn't come cheap. So in terms of like you investing in yourself, are you big on that? Just talk to us a bit about over the years, like, you know, have you spent quite a bit of money on just different courses, learning for other entrepreneurs, mentorship, and how important has that been in your life?
Yes, and I continue to do so as well. I've got my videographer with me today, who's not cheap. But I'm always reinvesting back into myself. So I've done that since an early age. The first time I actually spent money was going to the castle with Dan Peña. I believe that was, I can't remember, 25, 30 grand, which at the time was my life savings that I had.
I was about to say, way to go ball deep from
Yeah.
the beginning, eh? Like, if you're going to go for it, go for it. Aye, good on you.
But I had that money put aside. I just met my girlfriend and we were talking about getting a property together, our first property. And then I said, oh, by the way, I don't have that money put aside anymore.
That would have been done well.
I'm going to a castle in Scotland with this guy, and she YouTubed him and gone, oh my God, what are you doing with our future? But yeah, no, I invested into Dan Peña. I've done multiple other courses. Jeremy Harbour, who's now a mentor of mine as well. I'm always doing courses from people who are one step or multiple steps ahead of me, so I can shortcut that process by implementing their learnings. And that's something that I think I'll always do. I think the benefits of that greatly outweigh the investment that you make.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And obviously you've exited the first business. You've invested to go to this Scottish castle with Dan, which sounds amazing, to be fair. So how did you then take your next step into your own mergers and acquisitions and your first sort of really targeted business there?
I spent about 3 years on what I now know to be called deal heat. It's where you find one deal, you get obsessed with it, you stop sourcing other deals. And I did that for, it's probably the worst. When people go, oh, I've got deal heat, I've been focusing on this deal for 6 months now. I'm like, I think mine was 4 years. It was awful, absolutely awful.
What was that deal about? Was that a particular type of business? Or?
Yeah, so I put together a fantastic board of directors. I got the former chairman of a Premier League football club. I got a Merrill Lynch trained CFO, industry experts, 30 years in the NHS. And I put together a board of directors to acquire care homes.
Right.
And I tried acquiring a group of 11 care homes, which raised finance from the majority of finance. There was a shortfall in finance, and we started to raise finance by looking at bonds on the Luxembourg Stock Exchange, and the finance just kept falling out. And I was advised by my chairman at the time, just keep funding it, keep paying for your accountants, keep paying for your lawyers, which now I would never do in a million years. But it just dragged on, and it probably gave my confidence a bit of a knock, to be honest with you, because I'm being advised by someone more senior to me. This is the right thing to do, but I'm not getting results from it. And like 3-4 years is a long time.
Yeah.
And I'm quite a positive person, so I didn't want to give up with it. And then when that eventually fell out of bed, I said, right, let's go a bit lower here. Maybe 11 million group of care homes, quite a big first bite of the cherry. Mm-hmm. So I looked to acquire hair salons,
Right.
of which I acquired 6 of those in 6 months, rolled them up under one umbrella, under one brand, and then exited those.
Right,
All
brilliant.
right, okay.
And how? Sorry, I'm just intrigued with that jump. So you've went from care homes, big project, to hair salons. How did you make that leap from one to the next?
As in the industry itself?
Yeah, just identifying the opportunity. Right, care homes is gone. Right, hair salons is the next one.
Well, hair salons are a lot smaller businesses. So I've tried big businesses. I was going to say I failed them, but I learnt a lot in the process while attempting to acquire those skills that I use still to this day.
Yeah.
So I thought, what's low-hanging fruit here? And hair salons, they're extremely fragmented. It's a fragmented industry, and there's a couple of chains, but usually they're independents. They have a salon or two. So I saw an opportunity to go and acquire a group of fragmented companies, which I was taught by Dan Peña, put them under one umbrella and then exit those. So there's lots of industries out there. I can't remember how I fell into. Yes, I can. I was listening to a podcast by somebody else and they were doing it. So instead of deliberating for another 6 months of, what am I going to do? Care homes didn't work. I just threw the dart at the dartboard. It landed on hair salons. Let's do that. If it doesn't work, I'll learn something.
I think that's a really important message, though, because we see that quite a lot where someone could sit and go, right, my venture into care homes failed. I'm not going to do anything quickly here. I'm going to study every analytics, market trends. I'm going to spend months and months in data before I make my next call, where in fact, you've listened to one thing, thought, yeah, I think that could work, and then off you go.
Well, what's the worst case scenario? It doesn't work again.
Yeah.
You write down the lessons that you learned. Never make the same mistake twice in business. That's. I know I said the rule is there are no rules. If there was a rule, it's that.
Yeah.
Never make the same mistake twice. So take everything you learn, write it all down, and then in your next deal, just don't make the same mistake. And you'll make new mistakes, of course you will. But then write those down. And as long as you don't give up, it's like climbing a mountain. Okay, well, this way's blocked. Well, let's go back down. I'm not going to go up that way again because I've already tried that. Let's try a different way. And it may take you 6, 7 times, but as long as you keep going up and keep going up, it's like snakes and ladders, isn't it? As long as you keep learning, you will get there. It's impossible to lose if you don't give up, isn't it?
And see, I know there's many different ways that you can commercialise an opportunity in mergers and acquisition, right? Mm-hmm. What's your preferred method? So if we just choose a random example, right? One of the UK's fastest growing marketing agencies, right, that you're looking to buy, and you sense an opportunity and think, right, I can see that they're 60% of where they need to be, right, but I can maybe bridge that delta in the last 40%. What is your preferred way of trying to make money through that opportunity? Is it sticking cash in, growing the business, selling it for a higher valuation, or keeping it long term? Like, what's your typical thought process?
So there's multiple ways to skin a cat with this. If you're looking to acquire 100% of the company, you may want to don't put in your own cash because you're buying something that isn't yours. You might get in there and find out it's not what's advertised, and that's a big risk, right? So if you're going to invest your cash, invest it in skill sets where you're always going to get a return. But you may want to leverage the balance sheet of that target acquisition. So for example, they may have £500,000 in the bank in excess cash, but they need 200k of that for working capital. So there's a gap there of 300k that you could use to give the owner on day one as an initial payment, because it's more tax beneficial to them rather than paying a dividend. And then you could say, okay, well, they've got a debtor book of £1 million, so we might want to get some invoice finance on the debtor book, and we could give them some money that way on day one, and then put in a deferred element, so some seller finance on the back end, maybe 30, 40, 50% of the business that you pay out of the business's profits moving forwards. So they're incentivized to say, okay, the business is as we're telling you it is, so we know we can afford to make those payments moving forwards. What we do at Monopoli, as well as we've got majority stakes in companies as well, but the main model that we use is you're clearly industry experts as you've identified that 60% marker that you could improve by 40%. We do that with companies as well. Say, right, they're leaving a lot on the table here. We could add a lot of value. Why don't we come in, take 30%? We can either buy that 30% using the assets in the business, depending on how strong the balance sheet is, or we could do sweat equity. So come in, give us 30% of your business. We'll help you bridge that 60% gap to get you to 100%. So then that's going to add shareholder value, which is effectively what we do. So your 70% is now worth a lot more than your current 100%. because we've showed you where the gaps are in your business and how to grow it and how to prepare your business to make it more attractive to a buyer. So a lot of the time we go in, we take a sweat equity stake, add the value, partner with the owner, and make their 70% worth a lot more than their current 100%. And then we've got the contacts to help them find a buyer and for the buyer to raise finance so they can realise their shares and get shareholder value by exiting the business. If that makes sense.
That makes sense, and kind of mirrors a lot of what Stephen spoke about. Sure. So you're on the same page, which is always a good thing. Right? And just a question for me on that, right? So in particular, the sweat equity part, like, I'll just be really candid, right? I can't help but feel like, and I don't know whether that's maybe because your business is in good shape, it's not in a distressed situation, but as a business owner,
and we work with profitable businesses as well as distressed. We take sweat equity in profitable
businesses, right? Okay. I'm sat here as a business owner, I guess, thinking, right, if I'm giving you 30% of my business for no capital, I guess it's just sweat equity in the hope that our 70% is worth a whole lot more in 3 years. That feels like a tough sell to me.
Yeah,
but is that just my viewpoint?
No, you're spot on, mate. And if you position it like that, because what's the benefits for you? You don't know what the benefits are. So again, you've got to explain what's in it for them. And you've got to de-risk it as well. So for example, we might say to you, you're profitable. So it depends why a lot of people contact us. We don't contact them. So straight away, by them contacting us, they're telling us what they want. So we tell them whether we can achieve that or not. So that's a lot easier than me cold calling you, saying, give me 30% of your business. But if you wanted to exit for 2 million in 3 years, we'd say, okay, well, at the minute, your business probably isn't worth anything, because if you left the business, who's going to run the business? It's a bit different with you two because there's two of you, right? But if you both went on holiday for a month, what would happen to that business? We've got the experience of systemizing and scaling companies so that business can operate without you guys. So we would teach you how to do that and work with you and mentor you to help systemize the business, scale it so it's actually got some shareholder value, so it's got a size where it is investable or somebody would want to buy it. And then we say, okay, well, if your business isn't worth much at the moment, let's make it worth something, and let's make your 70% worth a lot more than what your current percent is. And if we can't achieve that, and by the way, people might have different metrics. They might say, we want help refinancing a loan. We want help exiting for 2 million. We want help doubling our profit within 12 to 18 months. Whatever metric they want is the metric that we say we feel we can or we can't achieve that. And if we say we can achieve that, we've got a very simple contract, just a one page, I don't know, like Latin or anything like that. We put a guarantee in there. If we don't achieve that, you can have your shares back.
Right, okay.
So there's the benefit for you. So we're backing it up. If I just cold called you and said, give me 30% of your business and we're not going to put any money in, completely different conversation. So we need to make it attractive to you, and it needs to be attractive for us, and it needs to work for all parties.
Yeah,
got you.
That makes sense. It's a good offer as well. I think you've changed a little bit.
You've sold me. Right, you're 30% yours, right?
But you've got to be able to work with the person. You've got to like the person, and you've got to believe in the person, because we've worked with businesses before where, okay, yeah, we'll give you 30% and we'll give you a small monthly management fee every month. Oh, I've been too busy to do what we discussed last call. I'm like, well, you can't systemize a business if you're not going to follow the steps. And we don't give you we want you to do 100 things in the next week. It's like, can you chase up your accountant and just get those management accounts so we can send that over to our finance broker so we can refinance your loan, which will obviously save us some money, and we can reinvest that cash flow to getting you an executive assistant to free you up so you can go and win more sales, right? It's all focused on... That's a really important point, actually. It's all focused on the business, not the individual. We're not interested in what's best for us. We're not interested in what's best for you. If we come on board as shareholders, it's what's best for the company. So we focus on that. But if they're not going to go and get those accounts or chase up the accountant, our hands are tied. So we've learnt this the hard way. We really want to work with people that are not just set a goal, but are actually driven to go and achieve that goal, rather than just saying, I've been too busy. Otherwise, we're going to stay static, and it reflects badly on us, because if we can't grow a business and we're we're on podcasts saying we grow businesses. It's not great for our brand. So we're now using deterrents to try and say to people, look, this is what we expect from you. This is what you can expect from us. These are our values. And if values don't align, then maybe it's best we don't work together. Because it's really important. If we work with someone, we need to deliver. And I need to look you in the eye and say, 100%, we're going to achieve that. But I need to know that you guys are all in as well. So that's a big deal that's changed in the last 3 to 6 months.
That makes sense to me. So really setting out your stall before you even start anything to say, look, this is what we expect. This is what you can get. You mentioned about the trait that people that you don't really, you want to avoid people that are full of excuses, pretty much.
Yes.
Which is a very, very fair thing to ask.
Yeah.
Maybe flip that on its head. What do you want to attract? What type of people are like your ideal business owner to partner with?
People that have a vision, whether that's a vision for and I know vision's a bit of a vogue word at the minute, but I've got a little vision book. You've probably heard of dream boards and things like that.
Yeah.
I turn them into little photo books. I've got it in my bag. I'll show you when we finish, actually. Dream house, dream holiday, dream car. How do I want my kids to grow? I want my kids to be able to speak Spanish because I grew up visiting Spain, as we touched on earlier. So if you know where you're going, you don't need to know how to get there. You just need to know where you want to go. But if you don't know where you're going and you wake up on a Monday morning and the weather's like how it is today in Glasgow and you don't have a big dream that motivates you, I can't be bothered today. I'm just going to roll over and go back to bed. Or actually, if you're like, no, I want that dream house. I want my kids to go to private school. It's fuel enough to get you through the bad days. So if people don't have that fuel and that fire in their belly, if they can't motivate themselves, it's very hard to motivate them from my end. So people that are passionate, enthusiastic, like learning, like self-improvement, so the type of people that listen to podcasts and listen to books, people that want self-improvement in their lives. I love helping people like that. I'm really passionate about that. I mean, there's two types of business owners that I work with, a lot less than the latter now. But somebody calls me, I go, fucking hell, what do they want? And then another one, I wonder what they need. They were doing really well last week. I hope they don't have an issue. How can I help them? Like, even if it's a Saturday or a Sunday, I want to work with people like that, like people that are passionate about getting better, because it's great fun. Working with winners is fun, right? It's like I said with the football team earlier. If you all want to win and you're winning games every week, you want to go training on a Monday morning. If you've just been spanked 5-0 on the Sunday and no one really cares, you're not really looking forward to that training session, are you?
Yeah.
That does make sense, and we can certainly, I guess, empathise with a lot of that. It's the same when you're managing large numbers of client accounts. It's like the ones that are really positive, go-getters, no excuses. You kind of enjoy that a wee bit more versus those that are just moany. And
typical 80-20 though, isn't it? 80% of your results come from 20% of your clients. If you could use that as a filter and say, well, 80% of the moaning comes from 20% of the clients. And by the way, they're usually the ones that you barely make a profit on as well. Mm-hmm. If you could use that as your filter moving forwards and get rid of those 80% problem makers and literally say, what do the 20% that we love working with, we get great results for, and we actually make money on, what do they all have in common? Okay, now let's start targeting our marketing to attract those type of people, and then not get rid of the other 80%, but start alienating them a little bit more, put them on different terms. You can only contact us via email now. If you want full access to us, it's going to be another 500 quid a month, and start pressing them away that way. So if they do want to keep using you, they could pay for the privilege of being a pain in the arse. But you really focus on the 20% that you love working with, and then go all out to find more of them and start putting your marketing messaging to attract people like that.
That's clever. And probably some advice that we can absolutely put into place in our own business. I wanted to ask a question, if that's okay, on, I think it's quite clear for speaking to both you and Stephen over the last few weeks, right, that you are like aligned in a vision that the way to do things, right, is to grow a business to a point, have that liquidity event, take the cash, move on to your next thing, right? Yeah. So in my simple head, when you're growing a business, right, you get it to a point where it's really successful. You can do one or two things. You can gun to have that liquidity event, or as you did back in the day with the taxi company when you were doing your travelling, you can kind of just benefit for that frequent cash flow, which you could then take in theory and go and do your other thing anyway. So why is it you think that you prefer or prescribe to that viewpoint to have your liquidity event, get cash out, move on to the next, rather than just enjoy the continual cash flow?
2 points in that. I'm going to name them now and then touch on them before I forget them. Businesses are volatile. You're only one main customer away from your business really struggling. And secondly, I'm a big believer in you make money when you sell a business, not when you run a business. So you can take out dividends, but you get taxed quite heavily. And you can live off the cash flow, but effectively you've still got a job. If you sell your business for, instead of, so let's say you got a 3 times multiple in your business earns 330 grand, you got a 3 times multiple and you sell it for $1 million. For that 330 grand, you're going to have to go to work for 3 years and you're going to have to pay a higher tax on that for the privilege of going to work for 3 years. If you exited at a 3 times multiple and got you £1 million, you're only going to be taxed 10% on that as it stands. So you've got 900K in the bank, but you've got 3 years of your life back. In that 3 years, using the skill sets and now the brain capacity that you've just freed up, so you go sail the Greek islands for a month or two, but if you're a business owner, you're probably going to get bored and start strategizing on your next plan. In those 3 years, do you think you can earn more than that 330 grand that effectively you would have a job for? So you get that money in the bank and that security, that 900K. You don't need to work, but you've then got the opportunity to go out and earn more money. But by working in that business for 3 years, it's not as financially rewarding, and you're actually costing yourself, not just financially, but the opportunity cost of going out and doing something different, and probably better, to be honest with you, because you've got a new outlook and new skill sets. So banking 3 years money up front is a lot less riskier than going, oh, we'll just keep this business for 3 years. Your main customer goes bust, your business isn't worth anything straight away. Your 5 years of hard work before has gone out the window.
Yeah, that rings true to me as well, just looking at the risk versus reward. Now, you've mentioned about like buying percentages of businesses and whatnot. So using your example you've got there of sell your business for $1 million, as it is, if you exit it completely, so you sell the business on Monday, you're out the business on Tuesday. I don't know how realistic that is. I suppose it depends on the business type. But how likely is that scenario to be fulfilled? So you sell your business and then you've got $1 million in the bank, cash.
Well, that's half the reason why companies work with us. So solve their problems, put in a vision, help them implement the vision. A lot of people list businesses for sale, but only 10% of businesses that are listed for sale on brokers' websites sell, because most people don't know how to sell a business. Every partner in Monopoli Capital has bought, grown and sold their own companies independent of Monopoli Capital. And then we've come together. So we all know how to sell businesses, but more importantly, because we've bought businesses, we know what we look for. So we can see it from both ends of the spectrum. So we know that if I was to look to buy a business, it didn't have second tier management, it hasn't got clear financials, and there's no KPIs in there, I'm probably going to think, this is a bit risky here. It's not worth parting with cash. But then I can pivot and say, look, why don't we take 30% of your business? We'll fix all this for you and we'll make it worth something. We can all exit together. So I've got 2 bites of the cherry there.
Yeah.
But what most people don't know is how to sell a business. They don't know how to put systems and processes in. They don't know how to scale it. They don't know how to create an internal data room. They don't know how to put in second tier management. They don't know what a buyer looks for operationally. They don't know what a buyer looks for on the financials. They put through all costs, their personal expenses through the business, as we all do, let's be honest. But if you're going to sell a business, stop all that. Because every 100 grand that you're putting through your own expenses, through holidays, cars, whatever it is, if you're getting a 3 times multiple, that's 300 grand that you're taking off the asking price so you can put a couple of things through the business.
So
it's about being sensible and getting a business ready for sale, which not even brokers can do, by the way. They charge you 10 grand to list it, but they don't actually know how to sell a business. And that's statistically factual because they only sell 10% of businesses that get listed. As buyers, we've got the perspective, and as sellers, we've all sold companies, both ends of the spectrum, so we know exactly how to prepare a business for sale. So if we took 30% of a business, they keep 70%, by actually getting it to sell, we're part of the the 90% that don't, we can take. Sorry, that doesn't make sense. My maths doesn't add up then. But by taking 30% of the business, we can guarantee, or at least greatly increase the chance of it selling using our experience than listing it with a broker, and we can make their 70% worth a lot more than what it currently is than if they listed it with a broker.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's almost like when you cast your mind back to like buying your first property and you know you're going to do it and you're like, right, we kind of need to get our shit in order here because the bank are going to have a nosy at the old bank statements and see what's been happening. So the old just eat orders. We need to watch what we're doing.
Hill.
Aye, we need to watch what we're doing.
So I'm not sure if it's the same up here in Scotland, but when you own a business, you need to put in your SA 302s for your mortgage, etc.
Yeah.
So you want that number to be as large as possible for the 2 years leading up to it, so you get a larger mortgage to buy your property. What a lot of people do is they just keep putting everything through the business. Oh, we'll pay less tax, we'll pay less tax, we'll pay less tax. But then you get a lower mortgage offer. And that's the same with a business. You go, oh, we'll keep our profits low, so we pay less tax. Okay, well, if your profits are low, you're going to get offered a lower multiple on your profits. So let's start preparing the business for sale now, 2-3 years in advance, so you can get the highest figure upon exit, which is the most tax efficient way. And then you can take 2-3 years worth of money up front, have the opportunity cost removed, so then you've got time to go and do it again, start a new business, invest in business, consult, and it's not volatile. Take your money and run in case something bad happens.
All right, mate. Well, listen, like that sounds as though I actually ahead of time told you that I was going to ask you that. You're very assured in your answer, which is great, and it's hard to argue with the thinking, to be fair. It really is, because like, again, you know, sitting in front of really, really successful multi-7-figure entrepreneurs on this podcast, they do all say the same thing, that you're almost like one banana skin away from going from having an amazing business to like, oh shit.
Yeah, you know, it's really easy to score an own goal, right? It's so easy to score an own goal in business, but that banana skin could come from anywhere. It doesn't have to be your fault. It could be your main client that goes bust at no fault of your own. I've got a mentor, and he had a call center, and his biggest contract was with AIG. And he said, the reason I didn't sell that business is because I had a contract with AIG. I'm going to keep it. Well, actually, he said, the main reason I should have sold that business is because I had a contract with AIG. So AIG went bust. They used to sponsor Man United and everything. So his business was valueless overnight because that huge contract went. But actually, that added huge value. So if he exited, he would have got a higher multiple because he had a contract with one of the biggest insurance companies in the world. So it's all about your perspective of how you look at it.
That makes sense. And God, who would have foreseen that happening, to be fair? Like,
exactly. And no fault of his own, but it cost him millions of pounds.
Oh, God. Well, you've touched a couple of times about Monopoly. We've obviously spoken to Stephen a few weeks ago, and he's gave his viewpoint on who yous are, what yous do. Yeah. But tell us a bit about how that partnership came together, the vision for Monopoly, and what yous are currently doing in the market.
Yeah, so there's 3 partners in Monopoly. You've got myself, Stephen, and a gentleman called Richard Pennock. Richard and I were working on a couple of acquisitions together, and then we pivoted to the consulting for equity, where we take a sweat equity, or sometimes we put in our own funds, etc. And then Stephen contacted me, I believe it was, to work together on a couple of deals. We all got on really well. There was complementary skill sets across the table, which is quite rare with 2 people, let alone 3 people. Yeah. And we just decided, Steve and I first met up in Dubai for the first time at a mergers and acquisitions conference where we were both speaking, ironically. And we said, look, why don't we do this? Come on board with us. Let's give this 100%. You're clearly very good at what you do. You can add a lot of value to the team. And that's how we became a threesome at Monopoly. And we have been for probably about a year now.
All right, mate. And two questions on that. Firstly, how do you find Dubai?
Yeah, I've been twice. Once I went with my mates and just got drunk for 3-4 days. And I said, well, Dubai's like anywhere. Of course it is if you're just getting drunk all the time. The second time I went was to speak at an event. And because I was at the event, I stayed off the alcohol, and I ventured out a bit more and went to local parks to clear my head and just get away from the crowds. And I enjoyed it a lot more the second time. I really did. I can see why people live there more now. I thought it was more the the influencer market, but I did see a different side to it the second time.
Good. And then the second question I had was maybe a bit more of an interesting one. So, like with any partnership, I'm sure there's times where you disagree, right? Have you had an example yet where one of you are really keen on a particular opportunity and the others maybe no quite there yet, or even taking a step further going, I don't know what you're seeing in this here, I'm just no, like, how do you chew through that together almost to make sure, because you've said by your own admission don't like being told what to do. So.
I do struggle with it, but I'm surrounded by or I've partnered with people I respect, which is a huge difference. If you're at school and you've got a teacher coming in a crappy little car telling you how to do well in life, you're not going to listen to them as much as you're partnered with somebody that's had a 7-figure exit to a 250 company, FTSE 250 company. So yes, I don't like being told what to do. I'm probably the most opinionated of the three. Stephen's quite chilled, to be honest, and very reasonable. Richard's a lot more experienced than me, but he's quite opinionated as well. A good example would be Stephen and I wanted to do a deal just before Christmas. Richard said, red flags all over this. And we're like, fuck it, we'll do it anyway. He went, okay. He went, do it, but you two can deal with it, okay? I'd be fine. We'll show you how it's done. We'll prove. But it wasn't the business, it was the owner. And because Richard's been there, seen it and done it, he saw it in advance. And of course, 5-6 months later, the owner wasn't following any of the steps. They were moaning, they were complaining. It was always someone else's fault. And he's just seen it that many times before that I always say your gut feeling, it's not something you're born with. A gut feeling is created through multiple bad and positive experiences throughout your life that you enhance with every decision that you make, whether good or bad. So with experience comes a stronger gut feeling. So he was spot on with that, to be fair to him, and Steve and I had to eat a bit of humble pie. But so be it, because then now we learn that lesson, and then we can teach other people that lesson and share that experience on podcasts like this, and hopefully other people can benefit from it. But
I'm asking that, to be honest, because again, we talk about this regularly, right? But I would say that the majority of people who've been on the podcast prescribe to a viewpoint that being in partnership in business is borderline impossible,
it's
right?
like
They really struggle. And they often turn to us and how are you making it work? And it's like, I don't know, I think a lot of times they expect some sort of scientific answer. Like, this is how we solve problems. This is the equation. Sometimes it is just like, I have a viewpoint, he ignores it and cracks on because he wants to do it.
I think the word you mentioned is exactly the word we mentioned when we were last asked. That's having mutual respect. I think that's the most important thing, and you can ring that through not just partnership but business, really.
And there's three of us, which I'm guessing is good because you can always have a majority. Then you're adding in three opinions, so it muddies the waters a bit more. It's not always plain sailing. I'm sure people are going to sit here and go, oh, my marriage and my business relationship is absolutely perfect. But they're the ones that get divorced 6 months down the line, aren't they? Like, it's not always perfect, but as long as the respect's there, and I've surrounded myself with people that have complementary skill sets and experiences, if I'm not going to listen to them, I might as well just go and do it on my own. So I'd say 8 times out of 10, I'd probably take a step back, assess the situation and go with the flow. But every now and again, I'll have a strong opinion and I'll go with it. And I'm not always right. And when I'm wrong, we learn from that and we move on. And if I am, I rub it in their faces.
And I know that through Monopoli, you've got a whole raft of businesses across your portfolio now, across a whole number of different sectors. Is there a particular sector or type of business that's emerging as a favourite of yours, over the course of a period? I guess with anything, you invest in a few and go, maybe wasn't as saucy as we thought it would be, and then equally there's others that you go, that was quite exciting. Is there any that's really getting you going just now, or do you not mind?
To be honest with you, gents, we've got a selection of businesses. We've got 4 or 5 electrical contractors, roofing company, flooring company, IT support company, transport company, small marketing company. So we've got a selection of businesses. My job mainly is to improve the business owner. So the industry doesn't really matter. If you've got leads coming into that business, somebody to run that business, which is usually the owner, and you've got a grip on the financials and the customers are happy, it doesn't matter what industry. So as long as I can teach the owner those with Stephen and Richard those playbooks, those systems, to get those basics in place. The industries are relevant. And then we go up the ladder and say, okay, now we've got the basics in place. Let's start preparing this for sale. You don't even have to sell in 3 years, but by having it ready, you've got the opportunity. And in order to get a business ready for sale, you have to systemize it anyway. So it's a great excuse to systemize your business. So that's where we start helping them systemize the business, scale it, and get it ready for sale. But the actual industry itself, I'm more working with the people than I am the industry.
Right.
Which I really enjoy, because you're never going to get two of the same people, whereas you
aye.
can have two electrical contractors.
Aye, and I was saying with Stephen actually that it's one of the things as an entrepreneur that you're both blessed with, and on other occasions it's the curse that holds you back. It's the shiny thing syndrome. You know, there's different ways that people choose to describe it, but as an entrepreneur, it's like, oh, look at the shiny, that's exciting. Yeah. But then that wee part of your brain goes, but I need to stay focused. So I was sharing with Stephen that I like that must scratch that itch almost.
I
of
was just
like,
about to say scratch the itch.
It's like you're getting that hit almost, but indirectly through other people that you're supporting.
Yeah, and it also gives me awareness into other industries. So one popped up the other week that contacted us, and they were telling us about their business, and it's fragmented and it's difficult to get into and it's high margin. Okay, well, why don't we just go and buy a load of those? Mm-hmm. So it gives me that, what's the word I'm looking for? It gives me the
it's like business intelligence, almost market intelligence.
Yeah, it gives me, I get to go out to the market and see what each industry does and go, okay, well, that's good business. I probably wouldn't invest my own money into that because it's too volatile. It's too dependent on one key customer. But that one's got high margins. It's got really strong balance sheet. If we get a bit of finance here, I wouldn't mind putting my money into that. And they're selling at 5 times multiple, not 3. So if we put together 4 or 5 of them, we could probably get a 6 or 7 times multiple, and we could do a flip in 3-4 years. So it gives me that that look into different industries to say, okay, I like the look of that. That one's probably a bit high maintenance to go and buy 100% of businesses in, or to inject our own capital in. So yeah, I get a good bird's eye view of multiple industries, which I'm guessing I'll look back in a couple of years and say that was really beneficial. But living it day to day, they kind of just blend into one, right?
Aye. And this might be a really tough one to answer, but I'll put it to you now. For anybody that's listening thinking, I want to be the next Jamie, I want to set up the next Monopoli Capital, because I love the sound of that. How do they go about it? What's the easiest path for them to take to end up in a position where mergers and acquisitions is their thing?
Mergers and acquisitions is very vogue at the minute. Everyone and their dog are selling courses on it to try and capitalise on how trendy it is. I personally think, it's going to sound really cheesy, but I really genuinely believe this. The only way you're going to make proper money in life is by adding value to people. So if you want to take minority equity percentages in companies, like you said, what's in it for you? Why would anyone do that? I can add a shitload of value. That's why. So start reverse engineering what people's pain points are and start developing those skill sets. That's how then you can start exchanging those skill sets for your time for money. Once you become really good at that, you can start exchanging it for money and equity. And then you can also say, look, I'm experienced at this. Why don't I go and buy my own company in that industry? Because I know that I can buy that at a 2.5 times multiple, but it's only operating at a 60% capacity like you guys have identified. I know I can get it to 100% because I've got the skill sets and I've got the track record. So I'm going to back myself here and buy that company. I'm going to start making it 100% efficient, and then I'm going to sell it, keep it, whatever you want to do. But I would start with, how can I help people? What are their pain points? And how can I solve their pain points? Once you've done that, it's easy to monetize. If you go into it with, like most people do, how can I make loads of money from this? People see through that. They really do. And they're going to put a barrier up, and it's going to be a bit like you mentioned earlier. It's going to be the equivalent of me calling you up saying, give me 30% your company. What's in it for me? Whereas if you message me on LinkedIn, and by the way, 80-90% of the 20 plus deals we've done have come organically through my LinkedIn, because I add value driven content on LinkedIn. So I'm always adding value to people and not asking for anything back. And then it comes to find me. But if I'm messaging people coldly, Would you give me 30% of your business in the hope that I can do something with it? Different conversation. So it's all about how you frame it, and you've got to go in with the genuine integrity to help people. I think that's where my nan came into it. Like, always help people, but it's the best way to earn money, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And again, it's hard to argue with that, mate. It really is. And, you know, when you look at all of the gurus online around how do I drive inbound inquiries into my business, that's what you're told. It's, you know,
Value.
Add as much value as you possibly can. I'm not particularly good at that, if I'm honest. I definitely need to sharpen up on that. Like, most of my content is just trying to attract bottom of the funnel folk. You know, here's what we're currently doing with X customer. Why don't you be Y customer? But I do too much of that. I need to do more of that value driven stuff and just, you know, hopefully.
That's why I keep getting pushed, but I'm not budging. I will not budge. I don't want to sell anything, because if I'm putting content out there, there's always an agenda. Oh, he wants you to buy his course, or he wants you to do his mastermind. If I don't sell anything and I'm just giving value, 99% of people I help, I will never meet, I will never speak to. But the 1%, not only can I help them, I can help them in a big way, and I can take equity in their company as well, which isn't just good for me, but it's good for them because it incentivizes me. Because if their company's not worth anything and I take 30% in it, 30% of nothing is nothing. So by them giving me equity, incentivizes me to perform to make that 30% worth something. So every day I'm helping people that I'm never going to meet. And incidentally, out of all the companies that have reached out to me, they've never liked, I think one has, out of all the companies we work with, they've never liked or commented on one of my LinkedIn posts. They're all lurkers. So I've been adding value for months and months, possibly years, to these people without me even knowing they exist. And all you need to do is add the value and have the right messaging on the right day of their pain point. I could talk about cash flow every day for a year. If you don't have cash flow problems, it's not relevant. If you wake up one morning and you've got cash flow problems, and I'm talking about cash flow, it's relevant. So I'm at the forefront of their mind. So just by adding value is a great lead funnel.
Yeah, adding value and having the mentality of, you know, if they win, I win. You know, it's a shared vision. That's the first time I've heard the phrase lurkers on LinkedIn, but we actually spoke about this earlier. we were reading like a bit of a busy chain on LinkedIn, and I was like, do you know what? I bet you for every one person who's vocalising on this, there'll be 10 or 20 times as much just sitting with the same opinion. So that's quite interesting about just keep the value coming, because a lot of people might start that journey of, right, I'm going to put value out in social media. They'll look at it and go, I've had one inbound inquiry this week, but I've had no likes.
Yeah, but what you've got to measure is what you can control.
Yeah.
So you can control how many times you post, how many comments you make on other people's posts. You can't control what other people do in your posts. So by following those metrics, you're going to drive yourself crazy.
Drive your curve, yeah. So we spoke about this a while ago, didn't we? And it's all about, right, how many inbound inquiries am I getting?
You can't control that, but what you can control is how many actions you're taking your end.
Yeah.
And if you're getting one inbound inquiry per 20 actions, if you times that by 10, you're going to get 10 inbound inquiries.
Yep.
As a rule, right? So you can control that. So always focus on the metrics that you can control.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just pissing in the wind, aren't you?
Aye. Matt, like I thought about this loads, probably more last year than this year, but when I really started ramping up my content and trying to do the at least one a day thing, and for a period was like, I'm not really getting any engagement here. I'm not getting any involvement. I'm not getting likes. But then I was like, but we're getting inbound inquiries, so who gives a shit? Like, you know, is it vanity metrics we're after here, or is it?
Yeah.
Is it
and don't
cash
forget,
in the bank?
a lot of people, everyone has an ego. Who's going to go on your post and be like, I really like your post. I'm crap at this. Can you help me?
You're right.
Because of the social proof, they don't want to be seen to be being weak. So just add that value, and they're probably not going to comment on your post because it shows that they're struggling with something, but they'll just pop into your DMs and go, I can really relate. It's never, I'm struggling with what you're talking about. I can really relate to your post today. Can you tell me more? And then it's a lot easier that way because they've reached out to you, they've admitted they have an issue, and they've acknowledged that you're the authority that could potentially sell that issue, which is a lot easier than going, I'm amazing at this, buy my course.
Aye. Yeah. A question I had for you, and Stephen gave an example when he was on the podcast, actually, of, I can't quite remember, I want to say it was in his parents' company, to put fair, rather than Enya's experienced in Monopoli Capital, but there seems to be a common thread in mergers and acquisitions around experiencing at least one example where you're told one thing, you go, right, cool, we'll buy into it, or, you know, we'll agree to take 30%, and then you look, I was going to say up the skirt, I don't think you're allowed to say that anymore, eh? Under the bonnet, let's call it, you look under the bonnet, and you go, what the fuck is this, what's going on? Have you had one or multiple examples of that?
Yeah, which is a great example of why 9 times out of 10 we don't invest our own funds.
Yeah.
Because you just don't know what you're getting into. If you're doing a full acquisition, so when we take equity in a company, we don't want a big 30-page document full of Latin to scare people off. Like, you want to start the partnership off on the right note with clear communication. If you're doing a full acquisition of a company and you're leveraging money or borrowing money from the bank and putting in your own funds, you've got a 100-page document that covers, if this turns out not to be true, you're protected this way with warranties and indemnities. And what we do, a lot of it's based on trust. But because we're not putting in our own funds 9 times out of 10, unless we really fancy the project, it's risk-free for us. But also, if there is an issue, like you told us your balance sheet is 250k positive, but it's 250k negative, okay, that's a different proposition than what you've led to believe. But guess what? You're with the right people, we can help you fix this. Mm-hmm. So it just gives us more opportunity to improve the business. And we might say, look, this isn't really what we signed up for. We might need to renegotiate the agreement. We've agreed 20%, but this is a lot of work here. We might want 40% instead. But what we'll do is we'll guarantee that we'll get your balance sheet from the position it's in to the position you told us to told us it was within 24 months or something like that. So it's just an opportunity to have another metric to improve for us based on our model. But if you're buying full businesses, it is high risk. It is high risk.
Yeah, that makes sense. And thinking about your strategy with Monopoly, so you mentioned there are quite a few different businesses you've got, a couple of different acquisition methods. Is there any sort of real target zones for the next maybe 3 to 5 years with Monopoly? What's your vision? Where do you want to get it to? Where are you driving it towards?
My personal vision for every company in Monopoly, whether the owners can execute on this is down to them, to be honest, at the speed they want to move at and if it's aligned with their personal visions. I'd like every company that we currently work with to have exited so the owner can bank 7 figures in their personal account within 3 to 5 years. That would make me feel good about myself, and selfishly, I'd also benefit from that financially as well. Yeah. But if you can, like I say, if you can help other people win, and by default you win as well, it's a lot better fuel than being selfish and just focusing on what's in it for me. But there's no reason why we couldn't work with any company that's doing 500k revenue or more and create 7 figures for that owner in 3 to 5 years if they follow every single step in our playbook.
Yeah.
And just on that, I don't quite know what the number is in terms of like how many businesses are sat within your portfolio, but I would imagine for most, well, you've spoken about it today, there's like a minimal 3-year lead time really before, for the most part, you're realising the potential gain of all your hard work that you're putting in. Is there a certain number that you get to within the portfolio where you go, we kind of need to start realising some of that gain here before we can continue to build, or can that just scale and scale and scale and scale?
I believe it can scale, but also there's not a cap on the number. We're not looking to just exit for the sake of exiting. It needs to be at the right speed for the business owner and align with their vision. So if someone says, look, I had a 3-year plan, but actually I'm really enjoying this. I've got the business systemized. I can now take my kids to school in the morning, which I couldn't do before. I'd like to do this for another couple of years. We always give the option of, we don't all have to exit together.
Buy us out.
You can buy our shares back. Wow. We can buy your shares. So we've got drag and tag in every contract, so that option's there. But yeah, ideally I'd like to exit with them so we can all win together. But if they wanted to buy their shares back, we've done that on 2 or 3 occasions and it's worked out really well for all parties.
Right, okay. Do you typically get a say? Like, do you get a vote, for example, when you take a sweat equity position in a business through Monopoly?
Yeah, we've got a number of clauses in our contract that are in place to protect the business. So they need 100% shareholder approval. So, for example, if I was to take an equity position in your guys' business and I said, I want to take out 100 grand and go and buy myself a Porsche. You're going to tell me where to go, right? So you would vote against that. But likewise, if I'm in this to grow the business and to make the business the asset of the business and realise shareholder value for all shareholders, if you said, we've made a profit, I want to take 100 grand out to buy a Porsche, I'm going to say, well, that doesn't benefit the business. Why don't you take it out as a dividend, because the business can afford it? We'd get a percentage of dividend. You'd get majority percentage of dividend. It's tax efficient and you could do whatever you want with the money. But to put it through the business expense isn't in the best interest of the business. So you hold each other accountable by having the need for 100% shareholder approval on, I think we've got 8 or 9 clauses in the contract. And again, that's to make sure that we're doing what's best of the business rather than what's best of the individual party. So we can't take the piss out of you and vice versa.
Right, that makes sense.
I was going to ask a question now. I don't know. So obviously you're talking a lot about monopoly, buying business, getting people to exit, right? Which is all like makes perfect sense. I can see the value in what you guys do. I'm going to flip the question away from the people you work with to you as the monopoly partner. Is the plan for Monopoly to continue to grow it to a certain point for yous to then exit, or is your strategy a little bit different with that?
Exit altogether to sell the Monopoly brand.
Yeah.
I think short term, don't want to get carried away with things. We just want to keep getting better and better and better, which we're very, very good at what we do. And we've got a fantastic network of professionals around us where we can just parachute them in and add a lot of value. I personally would like to acquire a couple of complementary companies, maybe a media company, videography company, etc. So we've got a marketing company, a small marketing company compared to you guys, but they can do a lot of work at cost to benefit the portfolio companies. So I'd like to really grow the brand that way and have an ecosystem of companies in it. And I'd like to exit the majority of companies that we're currently involved in so they can all pocket 7 figures personally.
Yeah.
I think once we've done that, you've then proven the model over a number of years. I think that's only going to enhance the brand and make Monopoly more valuable in the future, of which we could then look to exit that as well. So it's having 2 bites of the cherry there.
Yeah.
But it's definitely an option, but I'm more focused on the portfolio companies we work with now and helping them get results than I am looking at my big result in the future.
Yeah.
I think the more I can help people now, the more I'm going to get in the future anyway. So just stay short-sighted rather than long-sighted at the minute.
And that's that whole win-win mentality, isn't it?
Exactly.
For the long term.
If I start doing this so I can have 100 million exit in 5 years, I start thinking about what's best for me, not what's best for the portfolio companies and their owners. I think by reversing that and saying what's best for the portfolio owners and the companies, I'm only going to win long-term and win big long-term anyway. So, and it's better fuel for me in the morning. I'd rather wake up saying, how can I help John fix this problem today than how can I earn 100 million in 5 years? It's too far away for it to motivate me enough.
Yeah, it sounds like you're on the right path with it all anyway, with everything you're talking about. Another question, Monopoly, do you think it will ever go international? Do you think you'll ever acquire any businesses overseas?
I've just been asked to speak in Miami in September, a mergers and acquisitions conference. So there may be some opportunities there. Steve and I spoke at Dubai last year, so there might be opportunities over there as well. I think we would judge everything on its own merits.
Yeah.
And I'd rather absolutely nail the UK, systemise that as we preach to business owners, get a great team around us, maybe put in a financial director, an operational director, which we don't need at the minute because we're so good at that internally. Once we've done that, that would then release those energy tokens that I mentioned earlier so I can spend them elsewhere. But if I've only got 100 a day and I'm spending 50 on the States and 30 on Australia, that only leaves me 50 for the UK, whereas I need to make sure the UK is performing 100% first of all.
Yeah. I really like that viewpoint.
Yeah.
A hundred, as we would say in Glasgow, a hundred energy tokens a day.
Yeah.
It's so true, and as I've touched on, we refer to it as kind of shiny toy syndrome, where you see something and go, oh, there's probably an opportunity there, let's go after it, and then you get distracted. Or sometimes it does work out well and you go, right, that was worth it. More often than not, you go, oh, maybe it wasn't as exciting as it first looked, and you've wasted a couple of weeks in it. So those energy tokens have just been...
Well, Dan Peña taught me you need to write down where you spend your time. So whether that's in 15-minute increments, hour increments, whatever it is, write down where you spent your time, who you spent it with, on a bit of paper next to it, what are your goals? What does the task that you've been doing, that you've been tracking, and the people you've been speaking to have to do with your goals? If they're not aligned, then you've just been wasting time and getting distracted. So if your goals really are your goals, which a lot of people set goals just for the sake of it, you will monitor your time and monitor your energy and make sure they're aligned. Most people set goals and then get distracted. So if you can align those two, that's where the magic happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that. Really like that.
Final question for me. I could
Sure.
talk to you forever, like with all our guests, to be honest, but just conscious of time, and you've given us a lot already.
You've got
but
the sights of Glasgow to see in your trip up as well.
the weather's out for you. That's why I have shorts and t-shirt on. But final question for me was, of all of the entrepreneurs that come to you and say, look, we're looking for you to take an equity position, or we're looking to sell in 3 years, 5 years, what's the most common reason that most of them are looking to vacate their business in your experience?
A lot of the time they come with their pain points rather than their future needs. So a lot of people want us to help put out the fires, and then we can work on the vision for the future to exit. So it might be they got cash flow problems, they need some debt restructured, they got operational issues. So we tend to be firefighters. Once the fires are out, using the energy tokens again, if you're spending 50 of your 100 a day stressing about stuff, and then you can bring 50 energy tokens back into the game by eliminating that problem, that gives them a lot more capacity to start dreaming and planning for the future. So a lot of people come to us with problems, and then we can start putting that vision in. But when it comes to actually exiting the business, a lot of people don't know how to do it. They think you just pay a broker 10, 15, 20 grand and you sell your business a week later and you walk away with millions of pounds. The industry does not work like that. The average business is listed for more than 12 months. Only 10% of those listed sell, and you pay for the privilege. We kind of guarantee a sale because we've been there and done it, and we know what a buyer looks for, and we know how to package up a business for sale, so we can teach them that process. So we're kind of eliminating that 90% risk of not selling by partnering with us. Plus they get the additional benefit of being mentored by people more experienced than them.
Okay, mate. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming up for London to speak to us. We've really, really appreciated it. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. The whole world of mergers and acquisitions is admittedly completely new to me before coming across Stephen and LinkedIn, but sounds like an exciting business that you are involved in, and I've thoroughly enjoyed learning a bit about it over the last couple of weeks. So thanks a lot for coming in.
Thank you. And let us know, keep in touch. It'd be great to have you on maybe after you go to Miami and all these other wonderful things you're going to be doing. Next time you're in Glasgow, you know
Definitely.
where we are.
Well, thanks again, as always, to all our listeners for tuning in to another episode. Give us a like and a follow on all our socials, as always, and we will be back in a couple of weeks with another episode.
Thanks, Jamie. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, mate.
Thanks,
Thank
mate.
you.